26 years before Yellowstone, Kevin Costner starred alongside one of the greatest musicians ever in this box office hit. Kevin Costner has built a career playing men of principle. But long before Yellowstone turned him into TV's ultimate cowboy, he starred in one of the biggest films of the 90s alongside music icon Whitney Houston. Though often remembered for its soundtrack, The Bodyguard is much more than a love story set to Houston's vocals. Decades later, The Bodyguard remains one of the most successful films of its era, even though its reputation doesn't always reflect that. Far too often dismissed as just another sappy romance, the film is a heart-pounding action thriller with depth, substance, and one of the most unforgettable cinematic moments of the decade. The Bodyguard was a blockbuster 1990s hit. Starring an unlikely duo, The Bodyguard is James Bond meets My Best Friend's Wedding. Whitney Houston plays Rachel Marin, a superstar actress and singer who's receiving death threats from an obsessive stalker. But after a bomb detonates in her dressing room, her manager hires Frank Farmer, Kevin Costner, a former Secret Service agent, to protect her. Regularly butting heads, Frank thinking Rachel is a spoiled diva and Rachel believing Frank's methods are overkill, the pair learn to tolerate one another for the sake of her protection. However, after Frank saves her life during a concert riot, their relationship begins to shift, leading to a complicated romance. As the threats escalate and the tension between them intensifies, Rachel begins to realize that Frank might be the only person who truly understands the danger she's in. Costner and Houston lead in an overlooked classic that defined 90s romance and action. Written by Lawrence Kasdan, the script was originally conceived in the 1970s with Steve McQueen and Diana Ross in mind for the lead roles. However, the story remained in limbo for years until Costner pushed for the film to move forward. It was also Costner, who was a producer on the film, who requested Houston for the part of Rachel. Naturally, as Houston had never acted before, the studio was reluctant. But Costner was adamant, and the gamble paid off. When The Bodyguard hit theaters in 1992, it was an instant success. Despite mixed reviews from critics, audiences loved it, and the film grossed over $410 million worldwide, making it the second highest-grossing film of the year. While the Academy largely ignored the film, it did receive 2 Oscar nominations, Best Original Song for Run to You and I Have Nothing, both performed by Houston. Though neither won, the soundtrack's dominance at the Grammys and its lasting cultural impact proved that The Bodyguard was a defining film of the decade. The biggest issue The Bodyguard has faced is that it's often overlooked as just another sappy Hollywood love story. Given the soundtrack and synopsis, it's a fair assumption to make. But at its core, The Bodyguard is an action-packed thriller wrapped in romance, not the other way around. Frank is a professional with a strict moral code, and Rachel is an independent superstar with a fame that makes her vulnerable. Together, whilst it eventually turns romantic, they're 2 people brought together by circumstance. Yes, The Bodyguard has romance, but it's complicated and restrained. It doesn't waste time on flowery love confessions, but instead builds intimacy through shared trauma, quiet moments, and the knowledge that their connection can't last. The Bodyguard saw Whitney Houston's acting debut. Despite being regarded as one of the greatest singers of all time, having dominated the charts, acting was uncharted territory for Whitney Houston. Yet, Houston made the transition seamlessly, bringing her star power and charisma to the role of Rachel Marin. Houston was no stranger to being the center of attention. But stepping into a dramatic role for the first time required range, and Houston delivered. In many ways, she played herself, a world sensation with an incredible voice and adoring fans. In fact, there is a little truth to the story. Unsurprisingly, the singer was regularly harassed and stalked by certain fans, one even with plans to kidnap her. And her real-life bodyguard, David Roberts, admitted that many events in the film followed their actual experiences. However, that doesn't take away from her acting abilities, as Houston still delivered a strong and dramatic performance. Her acting aside, The Bodyguard also introduced viewers to Houston's greatest musical performance. One of the film's best and most notable moments is when Rachel performs I Will Always Love You during a charity concert. Though the song was originally written and recorded by Dolly Parton, It's forever associated with Houston. Her version, a heart-wrenching ballad, turned the track into something new, a powerful declaration of love and loss. Though Parton's version had been a hit in its own right, Houston's version surpassed it in every way, dominating the charts for weeks and earning critical acclaim. The song became a cultural phenomenon, holding the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 for 14 consecutive weeks, making it one of the best-selling singles of all time. Houston's version of "I Will Always Love You" became a timeless classic. In fact, her performance is widely regarded as one of the greatest vocal moments in film history. And the emotional weight of the scene, paired with Houston's flawless vocal delivery, turned it into an unforgettable cinematic moment. The reluctant action hero, with a romantic twist. The Bodyguard wasn't the first time Costner had played a hero. It wasn't even the first time he played a protector. But it was arguably one of his most layered roles, a no-nonsense action hero with an unexpected romantic twist. Before The Bodyguard, Costner was already a household name for his work in films like The Untouchables and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Costner's Frank is cut from the same cloth as his previous roles, but there's a key difference. Frank's vulnerability takes center stage. He's a man who struggles with his feelings for Rachel, while also dealing with the trauma of his past. Costner's role in The Bodyguard is classic Costner in that he portrays a man of duty and honor. But it's also fresh for him because it introduces an element of romance. His relationship with Rachel is anything but smooth. From the moment Frank enters her life, their personalities clash. Frank's professional instincts rub Rachel the wrong way, and Rachel's diva-like behavior frustrates him. However, as the danger escalates, Frank's tough exterior cracks, revealing a man who feels strongly for the woman he's sworn to protect. This would later become a signature of his career, with many of his later roles continuing that same tough guy on the outside, softy on the inside persona. Whether as the tough lawman in Open Range, the protective father in Man of Steel, or the devoted yet forceful John Dutton in Yellowstone, Costner has mastered the art of playing men who carry the weight of responsibility. Despite its massive success, The Bodyguard is still underrated. Often dismissed as a sentimental romance, the film is a sharp and well-crafted thriller that happens to have one of the greatest love songs of all time attached to it. While Houston and Costner are an unlikely pair, they're perfectly matched for their roles, a duo built on tension and trust. 3 decades later, The Bodyguard still holds up. And, with Houston's performance immortalized in both film and music history,